You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome back, and thank you for joining us for the second half hour of The Factor Uncensored. We're continuing our coverage of this year's AfroTech event, which touched down right here in Houston. I had a chance to catch up with Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott, who's a rock star in politics. He says crime is trending down since he took office, and there is proof out there. He's been making headlines for that. Just this week, his office was announced that compared to this time last year, homicides are down 32% and 31.7%, and non-fatal shootings have dropped 22%. He shared how he's been able to make that happen.
Mayor, when people see what you've been able to accomplish in Baltimore and a reduction in crime, what do you attribute that to? Obviously hard work and getting involved in the community, but what formula did you use, or is there a formula?
Well, listen, Baltimore, we have the lowest amount of homicides that we have through this day that you and I are talking on record ever, right? But this is about Baltimore's comprehensive efforts. I laid out a comprehensive violence prevention plan that was a 5-year plan. We're in year 5 of that right now, that talked about us handling this issue of public safety that has really been this talk about Baltimore for so long, as you know, in a different way. And we're talking about first recognizing as a public health issue and understanding that there is not one single thing that is going to reduce violence in Baltimore or any city, that you have to do all of the things. So when you think about our work to do a focused deterrence model or our group violence reduction strategy, where we focus in on the very small group of people who are the most likely to be the victim or perpetrator of gun violence, we give folks opportunities to change their life. In fact, they get a letter from me directly, but if they don't do that, then my police department at my direction removes them from casework, hands them over to our state's attorney or attorney general for prosecution. I'll focus on the flow of illegal guns into the city in every way. People that are using them and commit civil crime, the same thing will happen to you. If you're trafficking them, the same thing will happen to you. We'll turn you over to our partners in the state's attorney or the attorney general for prosecution. But it's also the historic investments that we made in community violence intervention, where we pay people who used to be those folks out there on those corners involved in their life to prevent that from happening by mediating conflict. We have the same thing in hospitals, our hospital-based violence prevention. When folks are shot, we have people working in those hospitals to prevent the next thing from happening. Victim services, our fights in the legal world, suing the nation's largest ghost gun company and winning, ending their business in Baltimore, in Maryland, and now really in the country with Pilum 80, winning the largest lawsuit ever against any gun store, for a gun store that was selling weapons into our city without background checks or ID checks, and they were selling ghost guns. All of that approach is how we do it, and this is everybody in Baltimore's progress to recognize, not to celebrate, but to recognize. Now, obviously, I'm the mayor of the city. I have to lay out the vision. My police department, who works very hard every day, everybody in that CVI ecosystem, our partners in the attorney general and the state's attorney and their great prosecutions that they do on that great police work that is happening, our community partners, everyone together is sharing in the success that we have and we're going to continue to have.
Was there any hesitation when you first brought this plan and said this will take 5 years to get it done? Let's move forward. Did you have anyone who said this will never work? We did. When I first stood out of a row home in East Baltimore and said, one, that we were going to have a comprehensive plan, which in Baltimore is required by law, a law that I championed and passed as the council president before I was mayor, and said that we were going to reduce homicides by 15% from one year to the next. People literally laughed. Folks said that, no, we need to go back to the old ways of doing it, zero tolerance and locking up anybody that was poor or black or brown in these neighborhoods, right? But having lived that myself, having been through that and knowing the history, right, that in Baltimore's time where we were, and for example, in the year 2004, we had 278 homicides and they arrested 91,000 people. Last year, we had plummeted that all the way down from 335 when I first came into office to 201. And with that 201 homicides, 201 too many, we only had 15,000 arrests, because it's never been about how many, it's been about
who and for what. People absolutely, and it wasn't just regular citizens. The media laughed at it. Elected officials laughed at it because I knew that we had to do the both and. We had to focus in the immediate and the long term, because you have to sustain the progress. And now we're sustaining it, and everyone sees us as a model for other places to look at.
And you had some partners when it comes to providing the resources when you first started out. Do you think you could do something like that in this current political climate in Baltimore?
Well, for us, we have a little flip. When I first started, we had partnership at the federal level and at the local level. And I had the best federal delegation from my Congressman Mfume, my senators that I have now Senator Also Brooks and Senator Van Hollen. I had Senator Cardin and Van Hollen then. And we did not have the partnership at the state level. Now it's really flipped on its head. We have deep partnership with our governor, Governor Moore, who is fully bought in. His team is at the table with their partner strategy, partners in that work each and every day. We still have the best congressional delegation in the United States Congress, and obviously what is happening at the White House is happening. But we're going to continue to work, and this is why we laid this plan out and why we didn't overly rely on one single source. We had federal input into this plan and dollars into this plan, which we're hopeful that our congressional partners will still be able to bring to us. But we also have state buy-in in dollars. We also have a lot of local buy-in in dollars. And we also have private and philanthropic investment into the Comprehensive Violence Prevention Plan. And that's how we have to do it. And we're going to continue to do that work because the work of saving lives is too important to worry about who's in charge.
And welcome back to The Factor. We continue our sit-down interview one-on-one with Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott. As the government continues its shutdown, he has a job of trying to help residents who are having a hard time financially. Let's get back to our conversation tonight.
And while you are mayor of Baltimore, local level, there's still the federal shutdown. And I'm sure you have concerns about your constituents, your residents there who may be impacted by this, those who may work for the federal government, those who may not be getting SNAP benefits. How do you even jump in and tackle something that the federal government should be doing?
Well, it's tough, right? And I want to say this for my brother and sister mayors really across the country. No local government will ever be able to fully fill the holes created by the federal government. And the federal government should be back open and running. SNAP should be provided. These things should be happening. People should be working and getting paid at their jobs, no matter where they are in the country. And it's unfortunate that that's not happening. And health care of Americans should not be the bargaining chip. That is something that should just be happening, period. So start there. But we did. Just yesterday, I laid out some local assistance for our residents of Baltimore. We're home to about 12,000 federal employees in the city of Baltimore alone, federal employees and contractors. So we laid out $1 million in child care assistance, $1 million in food assistance for our food pantries and stuff that we know are going to increase people's demand. We're giving more money in rental and eviction prevention. We also are stepping in to help our hospital partners with that hospital-based violence response, because those funds have also been cut and they were going to have to lay people off. We're stepping in to help wherever we can. We're hiring as many formerly federal employees as we can into city government, and the governor's doing the same thing at the state government. We're going to do our part at the local level, but we all have to be reminded that this is something that should not be happening, and Congress should be back in Washington, D.C., making sure that these resources are provided to all Americans across the country, because this is going to impact people rural and urban, north, south, east, and west. There is no corner of this country that will not be impacted by the shutdown.
And this helping hand that you're providing, is there a deadline on that? Because it's unsustainable if you are not the federal government with, in many cases, people would say unlimited resources.
Yeah, listen, we know that this is only going to be a short period of time. The child care thing, we know we're going to be for the next 2 months, November and December, right? We know the food is going to be there, and this is bumping up the resources that our food hubs and other places already have. We know that we can't sustain that forever, but we have to do something in order to try to help for as long as we can.
Being one of the young African-American mayors here in America, is that any pressure for you? Or did you take the bull by the horn and jump into the job? Obviously, you started with city council. Any pressure being such a high-profile individual in America now?
A tremendous amounts of pressure, but I love pressure. That's what I prefer. I'm the person that you want the ball in my hand with 2 seconds on the clock and you need that three-pointer. You want the ball coming up to me on that last important catch of the game, because I'm going to catch it and I'm going to score. And I'm going to score and act like I've been there before, because when you have grew up like where I grew up and been through the things that I've been through, nothing like that will scare you. And it's my job and my responsibility to show up for my people, for my city, and in particular for folks that come for places like me, to show people how wrong they are about us.
What is it like walking into that office? Are you thinking, okay, I can change the world today. I have this program, that program. How does it work for you when you walk into that office?
Well, for me, it's very different. I walked in during the height of the pandemic. So I walked in a high pressure situation. People were dying at a very high rapid rate at that time during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we had the dual emergency, public health emergency of that and gun violence. But I haven't been in City Hall, haven't had worked in the mayor's office before. I was well prepared for that moment, but we had to walk in and handle those issues. And starting with the pandemic, Baltimore fared better than most cities around the country because we made those tough decisions. Actually, the first thing that I did when I became mayor, there was no pomp and circumstance, was go outside of City Hall and say, go home and don't come back until I tell you to, right? Making those hard decisions. And for me, that's always going to be an easy thing to do, because you have to do the right thing, even when it's not popular.
You said making the hard decisions. What didn't you expect being mayor of such a large city here in this country?
Well, I don't think there was nothing I didn't expect, but there are things that you just don't know and things you can't control for, right? Like for me, we've been through a lot. Obviously, I've been through COVID. I lost 3 firefighters in one fire and lost some other ones, right? I've had police officers be shot. I lost a near dear friend of mine who was one of our violence intervention workers, right, who was murdered doing his actual job. And then also had a bridge collapse in the middle of the night with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Had a block of houses explode. Being mayor is something that I wanted to be since I was 6 years old. I love it. But nothing, those things are going to come, and you just have to be prepared to operate in the way that you have to with dignity, respect, being calm in that pressure moment, and making the best decisions with the information that you have at the time.
How important is accessibility for you with your constituents, those people who call Baltimore home?
Very. For me, listen, at the end of the day, one day I'm going to not have a title before my name, and I'm just going to go back to being Brandon Scott from Park Heights in Northwest Baltimore. When that day comes, those people, I have to live in a world where those people still treat me as they did before I had that title. And that's how you have to do it. And that's why you constantly see me out there with my people. There is no big line for me, right? I will very much rather be hanging out in the middle of a Drew Hill Park or at a rec center at one of our high schools with a basketball game than I would be in some restaurant and having some fancy dinner with a bunch of people. I want to be with my people because that's, one, what makes me feel good, and two, where I know the important things are.
And welcome back. More revelations out of our one-on-one with Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott. At this year's AfroTech conference, he's the youngest person to hold the office in more than a century. He says he hopes he can help others to break down doors.
Being a young politician, does that help? Would you advise, those who have spent like decades on the political scene to pass the torch on and bring some young blood in like Brandon?
I think it depends. I think sometimes it is time to pass the torch on. For me, I always tell folks that I won't be what I saw before. When I came onto the city council in 2011, I was 27 years old. One of my colleagues was 31 or 32. Everybody else on a 15-member council, right, was 45 and above, right? We changed the mold, so to speak. But I can't see myself like doing it and being there. There were folks who were on the council with me that were on 2 renovation placards of City Hall. You know you got to be there a long time in order to be on renovation placards at City Hall. We have to be at a point where we are making sure that you're getting there, doing the job that you can, and making sure that also that you're reaching back and building up the next. Because when you look at any other profession, right, that's what we do. We grow successors, we grow leadership, and we have to do that in public service as well, because there is no other profession in the world where we just lit some someone walk in. You're not going to let someone who's been a plumber their whole life walk in your house and just work on your electricity. You're not going to do that.
No.
We have to have folks that understand, learn, and know what public service is like, but what government is like. And that's, for me, has always been a big thing. And I can't wait to pass the torch. And sometimes the torch has to be snatched. That's something that I obviously had to do. And when it has to be snatched, we'll be ready to snatch it too.
And you're probably familiar with our mayor who recently passed, but he was also a congressman, Sylvester
Yes, sir.
Turner. And one of the things about him was you could tell he loved his job. Being a public servant, working and getting out into the community, he loved being mayor. Is that something that you get now?
I do, but I want to pause for 1 second just to say that Mayor Turner, Congressman Turner, is the reason why I told my staff I would take this interview. I would not be who I am as a mayor if it were not for Congressman Turner, right? He was the president of the African American Mayors Association when I was first elected. He put me on the board immediately, put me in rooms in a national scale multiple times, put me on a meeting with Vice President Harris in my first month in office as mayor. And it's someone that I'm always going to love and adore and thank him for allowing me. And he's someone that we have to, when you talk about leadership and decades of leadership, someone that always reached back, always pushed new and young people forward to say that one day we're going to have to get out the way. And the last time I saw him was at the DNC. He and I were over in the media pit, and he just hugged me and just said he was so proud of me. And I just told him thank you. And I just hope that I make him proud every day. But I love my job. I love it very dearly. There's no mistake about it. It is not an easy job. People think that if you're older folks, they think it's a lot of TV interviews. If it's young folks, they think it's a lot of social media. The reality is most of it is tough work. Being the person that has to talk to parents whose children have been shot, maybe not ever going to see them again, or may be dealing with health issues and having to help those families, speaking at funerals of people who have passed away, dealing with tragedy after tragedy, having to make those tough decisions around budgets and things that you know are going to impact people's lives, and trying to do the right thing that you can. It's never going to be an easy thing, but it's the most rewarding. Earlier today, I was speaking at Maryland Day, and a young lady, we did question and answer, and they said, does anybody have a question for the mayor? She said, I don't have a question, I just want to say thank you. You gave my son an award, and now he's a sophomore at LSU, and then went into a story about how I met her 14 years ago when I was a councilman. He was a little boy talking about what I wanted to be when I was the mayor, right? And that's what makes it matter. Those life-changing things, those 2, 3, 4 seconds it might take for me to help that person can change their family's trajectory for the rest of generations, and that's why I love this work.